بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الهداة المهديين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to congratulate everyone on the birthday of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, which was technically Friday, the 17th day of Rabi'ul Awwal. That is our Christmas, Muslims. And unfortunately, we don't see the excitement and the celebrations that Muslims show similar to what Christians show on Christmas. It is the birthday of our Prophet, the greatest messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in addition, it is also the birthday of his grandson, Al-Imam al-Sadiq, the sixth Imam of Ahlul Bayt, alayhimu salatu wassalam. And what makes today even more special is that it's also my father's birthday. October 16th. Enjoying his birthday party. No, he's missing for another reason. So anyway, I'd like to congratulate everyone, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you all and to make us true followers of Muhammad and Al Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As Muslims living in America, as American Muslims, sometimes we face challenges. We face difficulties because of our identity and faith in this country. Whether it's prejudice, discrimination, hatred, the rhetoric that sometimes we hear from others towards Islam and Muslims. Poll after poll indicates that Muslims and Islam enjoy the least favorable views out of all faiths and followers of any faith in this country. If you live in this, in Dearborn Heights, maybe you may not feel that so much. But if you get out of this bubble and you travel around the US from time to time, you start noticing that as a Muslim, you're not looked at the same way as everybody else. You're the black sheep. And it's not a generalization that I could make, but it's something that you do come across from time to time. And like I said, sometimes it's discrimination, prejudice, violence, hatred, and there's many stories, and I'm sure each one of you has certain experiences that you can speak about. When you enter the US, the discrimination that sometimes we face as Muslims and the customs and immigration, and so on and so forth. Today I'd like to examine the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I'd like to show you that there are many similarities between our struggles and his struggles. When the Prophet began to preach Islam, he also faced a lot of discrimination, prejudice. He also faced a lot of hatred and violence. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never gave up. He continued, he persisted, and he succeeded in the end. And this is where we can draw some lessons from the life of Rasulullah and be inspired just like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So look at the struggles of Rasulullah. If you think it's tough being a Muslim living in America, then look at what Rasulullah and his companions went through. When Rasulullah began to preach Islam, the people of Mecca were not happy. So what did they do? Number one, they tried to bribe Rasulullah. They went to him, they told him, look Muhammad, we don't want to hear any of this nonsense. There's only one God. And the idols don't make sense. We don't want to hear this. How much do you want? Whatever you want, we'll give you millions. You want to marry the most beautiful of our women? We'll give you that. Just tell us what you want. Stop preaching this new religion. The Prophet said never. There's a famous hadith where he said, if the sun was to be placed in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, meaning you give me everything, I would never leave. I would never stop preaching Islam until I succeed or I'm killed. I'm a martyr on this path. So when that failed, they couldn't bribe him. They went to his uncle, Abu Talib. His uncle, Abu Talib, was his caretaker and he was a supporter. They went to him. They told him, look, surrender Muhammad, give Muhammad to us, and we will give you another person for you to, to be like your son. Because Rasulullah was like the son of Abu Talib. He was the nephew, but he was like the son of Abu Talib. So give us Muhammad and we'll give you the most beautiful, the smartest guy in Mecca, and you can be his father, his stepfather. Abu Talib said no. So that failed. When that failed, what did they do? They escalated. They then tried to discredit Rasulullah. They tried to ruin his reputation, and they waged a psychological war against Rasulullah, a war of character assassination, so that no one tries to become a Muslim. No one thinks highly of Rasulullah. So a barrage of accusations against Rasulullah, so that they would discourage anyone. They spread lies and rumors against the Holy Prophet. All to what? So that they would stop the message of Rasulullah from spreading. So no one would think about becoming a Muslim. And obviously this is always a method. Propaganda is always a method that is used by someone that is intellectually weak and bankrupt. If you can't intellectually beat someone, what do? You attack his character, correct? You start spreading lies and rumors. You use propaganda, which once again shows you, us Muslims, the propaganda that we face many times shows the bankruptcy of the other side, the intellectual bankruptcy. Or else if they had, real concerns, many times they would bring it up. So anyway, this is where they began to discredit Rasulullah and accuse him. Look at the accusations that the Quran tells us. And I want you to look at the similarities. Muslims today, what are we accused of? Terrorism, violent, correct? All Muslims. Terrorism, violent, what else? What? Beat up women, we're misogynistic, anti-feminist, we're backwards, we're uncivilized. We want to take over this country and establish Sharia law. All this nonsense, correct? All this nonsense against Muslims, all these accusations. Look at Rasulullah, same thing. The people of Mecca use the exact same methods, the exact same way. So the Quran tells us, number one, when they saw Rasulullah was gaining supporters because he made sense, they started to accuse him of being what? Crazy. He's insane. The Quran says, وَقَالُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِي نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الذِّكْرِ إِنَّكَ لَمَجْنُونَ. Majnoon is what? Crazy. They told him, oh, you who's claiming that God is sending a messenger to you, you're crazy. So they started to spread this rumor between the people of Mecca that Muhammad all of a sudden lost it. He's claiming that he's seeing angels and he's hearing angels, and all of a sudden God chose him and he sent him to save the world, right? So they tried to discredit him and they tried to assassinate his character by calling him crazy. Now, did that work? Of course it didn't work. Why? Because when people would hear the Quran, the eloquent, deep verses of the Quran, they knew these were not words of someone that's crazy, right? They knew this person made sense. It resonated with them. So obviously this attempt failed. This is not someone who's crazy. The people of Mecca realized they have to step up their game. Crazy, it's not going to work. So what did they now do? Number two, the Quran tells us the second accusation, the more sophisticated accusation, crazy didn't work, is that he's a magician and he's hypnotizing you. Why is it that when you read the Quran, because what was happening is with anyone from the Arabs would read the Quran, they would fall in love with it. So eloquent. For anyone that understands the Quran, they can relate to this. But if we read the English Quran, unfortunately, there's a huge difference, brothers and sisters, between the translation and the actual Arabic Quran. The richness, the deepness, the eloquence, because the Arabic Quran is the actual words of God. The English is not. It's a translation of what God's trying to say, of what God is saying. So when they heard the Quran, it struck them with so much power. It was something that they had never heard before. So the people of Mecca saw this, the idolaters. How do they stop people from believing in Muhammad? He's a magician. He's hypnotizing you. Don't listen to the Quran. Because when you listen, you're going to be hypnotized. That's why you're going to fall in love with the Quran. Not because it makes sense, it's beautiful, it's eloquent. And the Quran also tells us this. The Quran says, وَقَالَ الْكَافِرُونَ هَذَا سَاحِرٌ كَذَّابٌ. The disbelievers said, this is a sahir, a magician, a sorcerer, and he's a liar. Now, eventually that also didn't work. So what did they do? They started to mock Rasulullah. They started to mock him in any way possible. Even they started to personally attack him. For example, one of the ways that they would mock him is that they would call him Al-Abtar. Al-Abtar. In Surah Al-Kawthar, we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about this. Al-Abtar is the one who has no offspring. Rasulullah had no male children. And in the Arabs, it was important to have a male child to continue your legacy, because your daughter does not continue your legacy, correct? Because your daughter, when she gets married and has kids, your grandchildren are going to take the last name of your son-in-law, not your last name. So they would call him Al-Abtar. He had young sons. He had, for example, Al-Qasim. He had Ibrahim. They died when they were babies, so they started to make fun of him. And that's why when Fatima Zahra alayha salam was born, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought down the verse, the chapter of Al-Kawthar. Inna a'tainaka Al-Kawthar. Al-Kawthar is one of the names of Fatima Zahra, which means in Arabic an abundance of good. Allah has given you Fatima, and you specifically, Rasulullah, your lineage will continue through Fatima, through Hassan and Hussein. إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ إِنَّ شَانِئَكَ هُوَ الْأَبْتَرُ. Your enemy is the Abtar. He's the one that his lineage will be cut off, and that was a man by the name of Al-As ibn Wa'il. He was the one that directed this accusation against Rasulullah. So all these accusations, brothers and sisters, they were hurting Rasulullah. Rasulullah had emotions. He had feelings. Don't think that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could easily just brush that off. Yes, it did not weaken his determination. It did not stop him, but psychologically, mentally, it was leaving a toll on Rasulullah. It was hurting his feelings such that, look at what the Quran says. Allah tells him, Allah consoles him. He tells him, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. Allah says, I know that the words that they are saying, this is hurting you. It's depressing you. Rasulullah had emotions and feelings when everybody is spreading propaganda against you. You're crazy, you're insane, you're a sorcerer, you're abtar, you're this, you're that. Obviously, this is going to affect Rasulullah. Even though it's all lies, even though he's a messenger of God. So this also shows us it's normal sometimes to what? To feel bad, to be depressed about this. As long as it doesn't what? Stop you from continuing your mission. So when all that failed, the character assassination, they saw this is not helping. People are what? Joining Islam. What did they do? They escalated their opposition by becoming violent. They started to physically assault Rasulullah. They would tell their kids, go and stand in front of the house of Rasulullah, throw stones at him. Rasulullah, can you imagine? He leaves his house, he opens the door, he sees tens of kids just throwing rocks at him. He would come back home injured, covered with blood. They would place thorns in front of his house. They would try to bother him in any way possible. And then they threatened to kill him. One day Rasulullah was praying in Masjid al-Haram. Abu Jahl, which was the main instigator and the enemy of Rasulullah, tells another one of the idolaters, Ibn Za'bara, to go and stop Rasulullah from praying. What did he do? He went and he took the body of a dead animal. The body of a dead animal that was covered with blood and whatever, the animal contains inside. It was the animal was like ripped in half. He took it while Rasulullah was in sujood and he poured it all on the head of Rasulullah. Rasulullah was covered with all that filth and blood. Rasulullah was very upset. This is what they would do to Rasulullah. Then they threatened to kill him if he doesn't stop. And then they actually tried to kill him. They tried to assassinate him, and this is when he had to flee Mecca. That's the famous story of when Imam Ali slept in his bed. How many of you have heard that story? Imam Ali went and he slept in the bed of Rasulullah. They came to kill him. They saw it's Imam Ali. Rasulullah had left and migrated to Medina. So he had to eventually flee, because he was going to be killed by the people of Mecca. Anyone that became a Muslim in Mecca, the companions of Rasulullah, if you think it's difficult being a Muslim in America, imagine how difficult it was being a Muslim in Mecca during the life of Rasulullah. Anyone who was accused of being a Muslim would be arrested and tortured. For example, you have Ammar bin Yasir, the famous companion. He, alongside his parents, his mother and father, Yasir and Sumayya, they were tortured until his parents died. They died under torture, under the pain. Because they would tell them to say and accept the gods, the other gods, they would say no. And they would torture them until they died. Another one of the companions of Rasulullah, Al-Khabbab ibn al-Irat. He was a slave who had become a Muslim. His master tried to discourage him. He would refuse. He fell in love with Prophet Muhammad. You know what she did? It was a female master. She took him outside the house. She uncovered his back. And then she took a metal rod. She put it in the fire until it became red, burning hot. And then she started to iron his back with that metal rod. And she would tell him, disown Muhammad. Glorify the gods, the other idols. The man would say no. He would fall unconscious because of the pain. Once he regains conscious, he would do the same thing again and again and again. He never said no. He stayed steadfast. Khabbab ibn al-Arat. See the dedication of those people? So it was not easy being a Muslim, brothers and sisters. The beginning is always difficult. And like I said, that's why Rasulullah had to flee Mecca and go to Medina. So this was in the first couple of years of Islam. But then fast forward to the last few years of the life of Rasulullah, and you see a completely different picture. You see Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam now has hundreds of thousands of supporters. Rasulullah now has conquered Mecca. Rasulullah now has conquered the entire Arabian Peninsula. And he has thousands of loyalists that are willing to die for him, to sacrifice their lives for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How did Rasulullah achieve that? How was the Prophet able to attract so many people such that they were willing to place their lives on the line for him? They were in love with him. They would do anything for him. How was Rasulullah so successful, brothers and sisters? Within what? Within just 10 to 15 years, this transformation happened. Now, there's many factors that led to the success of Rasulullah. Obviously, the Quran, the beauty of the Quran, the eloquence, Rasulullah made sense. Everything he said was logical. Yes, that's all true. But however, one of the greatest ways that Rasulullah was able to attract people to his faith, one of the most effective ways that enabled him to win the hearts of people was through his akhlaq. I know we've heard this over and over again, but hearing it is not enough. We have to implement it and apply it. It was the character of Rasulullah, the impeccable, sublime character of Rasulullah. And Allah says this in the Holy Quran. He says, why did Rasulullah succeed with his people? Why did they love him so much? The Quran says, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. Because you're so merciful with your people. You're so lenient. You're so loving. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَنْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If you were vulgar, Ya Rasulullah, if you were someone that was bad-tempered and angry, then people would run away from you. People would leave you. Even if you were Einstein, even if you're Socrates and all your words are words of wisdom, but your character is not a good character, you're going to repel people away. You're going to turn them away. It was because of Rasulullah's akhlaq. And then the Quran says after that, فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. حَيَاكُمْ اللَّهُ سَيِّدْنَا. So be forgiving with them. Be merciful وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, and consult them. You see, this is what made people love Rasulullah. When you would go to the masjid of Rasulullah, he would make you feel important. He would ask even a newcomer, what do you think we should do? What do you think is the best idea? He made everyone feel like they were a part of the community, a part of the society. This is what made everyone love Rasulullah so much. His akhlaq, his honesty, his integrity, his respect for everyone, his humility. This is how he won the hearts of everyone. And in this, brothers and sisters, is a lesson for every single one of us. The Quran says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. In Rasulullah, there is a great example for you. Meaning, learn from Rasulullah. There's propaganda against you, O Muslims. There's accusations, you have enemies, there's discrimination, you're struggling, there's difficulties. Look at the life of Rasulullah and learn from his example and seek inspiration from him and follow in his footsteps. And this shows us, brothers and sisters, if we want to make Islam more favorable in the eyes of non-Muslims, you don't need knowledge, brothers and sisters. Yeah, knowledge is good, but you don't necessarily need too much knowledge. Yes, we do need some scholars, obviously, dispelling some of the accusations, some of the misconceptions against the Quran and the Prophet and Muslims. But every single one of us doesn't need knowledge. You don't necessarily need too much money in order to spread Islam, or not just spread Islam, at least fix the reputation of Islam. Show Islam in a good way. All you need is one thing, and that is your akhlaq, your character. When you present yourself in a good way, this is the best advertising and marketing that you could do for Islam, for the Holy Prophet. Listen to the hadith of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, which I said in the beginning, Friday, and today we're also celebrating his birthday as well. He says, فَإِنَّ الرَّجُلَ مِنْكُمْ إِذَا وَرِعَ فِي الحديث أو في دينه وصدق الحديث وأدى الأمانة وحسن خلقه قيل هذا جعفري فيسرني ذلك. Imam al-Sadiq would gather his companions and he would tell them, if you guys behave and conduct yourself in a good way, your character is a noble character, people are gonna what? They're gonna praise me. They're gonna say, look at how Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq raised his students. They're all respectful, they're all honest, they're trustworthy, they're humble. So that would reflect upon me and I would be proud. On the contrary, if you guys go out and you misbehave, you conduct yourselves in fraud, you're dishonest, people aren't just going to attack you, they're going to attack me. Look at these Ja'faris, look at these Shia. The Shia are bad. And this is exactly, brothers and sisters, what's happening with Islam and Muslims. You know, when someone's name who is Muhammad in our community commits a crime, and I read about it all the time, sometimes every week in the local news, a doctor whose name is Muhammad or Ali or Hassan or Hussein, or a pharmacist or a businessman or I don't know who is found to be guilty with fraud. He's, trying to steal the Medicaid, he's trying to steal the government, he's trying to commit all sorts of fraud. Do you know the damage that does to the name of Rasulullah? When I carry that name Muhammad, Ahmed, Mustafa, or the name of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and I commit a crime or I misbehave, that reflects upon Rasulullah and Islam, brothers and sisters. Why is it that many times you find the places that Muslims live, and I've noticed this in many countries, I'm not speaking specifically about this area, you find in that area Muslims are always known for certain negative things. Oh, Muslims and drugs, or for example, Muslims and tax fraud, Muslims and insurance fraud, Muslims and violence. We are, brothers and sisters, we're giving them a pretext to attack us and to attack our religion. So one of the most important, brothers and sisters, obligations that we have, if you want to serve Rasulullah, if you want to try to give back a little for what he did for Islam 23 years, then at least conduct yourself in a good way so that when people see a Muslim, they say, yeah, this is a Muslim. When they see a person carrying the name of Muhammad or Ahmed or Fatima and Zainab and so on and so forth, this is a true Muslim. Someone who resembles Rasulullah and his akhlaq. A couple of days ago, an American convert came to me and she said, I want to convert to Islam, but I'm afraid of my father because he's a very religious Christian Catholic, and I'm afraid if I convert and he knows, he'll kick me out of the house. What should I do? You know what I told her? I told her exactly what Al-Imam al-Sadiq told one of his followers. There's a hadith in the book of Al-Kafi. A man by the name of Zakaria ibn Ibrahim. He says, I used to be a Christian until I converted to Islam. When I converted to Islam, I went to meet Al-Imam al-Sadiq. And I told him, my parents are non-Muslim, they're Christians, but I'm a Muslim. How should I deal with them? Should I, step back a little, start becoming cold with them because they're on a different religion? What should I do? The Imam told him, no. In fact, I will tell you to do the exact opposite. Now that you've become a Muslim, become extra compassionate and loving with your Christian parents. Show your mother love. They were old. He said, my mother is blind. She can't take care of herself. He told her, take care of her, all of her needs. Do not leave her and allow her to go to anybody else. Show her love that she never saw before. This is how you conduct yourself. He says, I went back to my village, and all of a sudden, I started to love and respect and take care of my mother like I never did. I became the best son ever, such that my mother noticed. She told me, my dear son, when you were a Christian, you never did this. You never showed me this much love and compassion and care. Now that you left this religion and you joined this new religion, why have you changed? He told her, because this was what my Imam told me. This is the teaching of my religion. He told me to respect my Christian mother even more than before. She was fascinated. She said, is this man As-Sadiq, Ja'far As-Sadiq, is he a prophet? Because only a prophet would say something like this, that love your mother and respect her no matter what her faith is. He said, no, he's a descendant of our prophet. So then she told him, tell me about this religion. He says, I started to tell her about Islam. He says, on that same day, she started to pray. She fell in love with Islam. She prayed Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and then she fell ill. She was already ill. She fell very ill, and she was about to die. In those final seconds, she told me, tell me about your religion again. I told her about Islam. She said the Shahadatain and she died. A pure Muslim. Went to Allah as a pure Muslim. How? Did he give her lectures? Did he speak to her about the Quran and how vast and deep the Quran is? Did he give her so many beautiful ahadiths? No. It was through his conduct and behavior that he was able to influence his mother. So I told this convert the same way. Look, in the beginning, yes, your father may resist. He may refuse. He may not be happy. He may even kick you out of the house. But once he sees that Islam has positively impacted your character, he's not going to be able to say no to Islam. He's going to see that this improved you. By becoming a Muslim, you became more selfless. You became more compassionate, more loving. I told her, once you do become a Muslim, start treating your parents much better than you used to. Show them love and care and kindness much more than before. When you show someone love, they cannot show you hatred. This is human nature. If I show someone love, I'm going to own that person's heart, whether they like it or not. I'm going to enter their heart. So your father, in the beginning, because it's going to be difficult for him to accept that his daughter is a Muslim, but once he sees that her becoming a Muslim made her a better person, then he will not resist anymore. He will not object anymore. So our conduct, brothers and sisters, is something that we really have to work on. Our akhlaq. And on the contrary, like I said, sometimes we may repel some individuals who may have otherwise became Muslim because of our akhlaq. I went one time, a trip to Canada, and I stayed at a brother's house. I was giving lectures. The brother that I stayed at his house was very religious, very good person. But I learned that his oldest son was a Christian. He was like 26, 27. And even on Sunday, I was there for a couple of days, he got up and he went to church. So he had become a very devout Christian. So I asked, I didn't want to ask him directly. It was a bit, difficult for him to speak about this because he was very, very unhappy. So I asked someone else in the community, what's up with this guy? The father is such a devout Muslim, the son is a devout Christian. What happened? So they told me that the son, he would come to the mosque, he would always listen. Islam is this, Islam is that. It's all nice things that you're hearing about Islam. But once he would see Muslims in his community, they're the worst people. They're always lying and cheating and fighting between each other, and they're arrogant and they're this and that and they're racist. It's like, this is Islam? I don't want this religion. While he says, when I go to the church, everyone's so nice. Everyone's so respectful. It's not just talk. They also what? Walk the walk. They also show through their actions. So he says, this is the true religion. It was because of those Muslims, they will carry the burden of this person leaving Islam. He saw that it doesn't add up. Why are Muslims not like Rasulullah? Maybe it's all a lie. If it was true, then they would show it with their actions. So we have to be careful, brothers and sisters. Sometimes our actions will repel others from becoming Muslims. And then Allah Azza wa Jal will make us bear the responsibility of that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, real quick, I just have about 10 minutes. When we say, let's improve our akhlaq, our character. Now, this is a huge, it's a huge thing to do. It's a huge transformation process. So what do we do? And I taught in the hawza here in the seminary, I taught 2 courses, titled The Philosophy of Islamic Ethics. And in this class, I spoke about every vice and how to get rid of it and how to become a better person, and I gave practical steps. I think it was about 37, 38 lessons. So I do, if you want to delve into this, I do recommend and encourage you to take those courses. They're all online in the Hujjah Seminary, hujjahseminary.com, I believe it is. And this is if you want to really delve into it. But in a nutshell, how can I improve my akhlaq? If I just have a couple of minutes, there's a hadith from Al-Imam al-Sadiq. Once again, we celebrate his birthday by what? By learning from his teachings. Al-Imam al-Sadiq was asked, how do I improve my akhlaq? What do I do? Al-Imam al-Sadiq said 3 things. These are the 3 most important things. Listen carefully. Number 1, he said, tulayyin janahak. He said, number 1, be humble with other individuals. Do not conduct yourself in an arrogant way. Do not speak to others in a condescending tone. Be very humble with other individuals. If someone has a title, doctor, or I don't know, Hajj, or Sayyid, or whatever, address them with their title. Be very respectful and sensitive when you speak to other people. Be humble. Some individuals in the community, brothers and sisters, they come off as being arrogant without even them knowing. Just the way they speak, they keep on interrupting, correct? Always talking about themselves. They dismiss the views of others. And they don't do it, intentionally. The more humble you are, the more you will attract and you'll be loved by other people. There's a hadith from the Prophet where he says, مَا تَوَاضَعَ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ. The Prophet says, when you become humble, some people think you're lowering yourself. You're not. By being humble, Allah will what? Will elevate you in the eyes of people. And if you become arrogant, you think that this is going to hire you, this is going to elevate you, it's the exact opposite. The Prophet says Allah is going to make you what? Allah is going to lower you in the eyes of people. That's why look at Rasulullah. He was the most humble individual that you could ever see. When you would enter the masjid of Rasulullah, if it's your first time, you would not even know who Rasulullah is. Why? Because he dressed just like everybody else. Because he sat just like everybody else. He didn't have a special place to sit. So they would have to come. Which one's Muhammad? They wouldn't know. He would sit with everybody else. He wanted to make them feel just like he's one of them. When he would eat, he would sit and eat with everyone. Many of them were slaves. Many of them were so poor. He would sit with every single one of them. He would laugh with them. He would speak with them. He was so humble. He would feed them. This was the akhlaq of Rasulullah that people were in love with so much. And there's so many traditions from our imams of how they would speak about it. When you think about Rasulullah and his majesty and his greatness, he was the most easily accessible person. He didn't have secretaries and bodyguards. He was so easy. They would come in his house in the most inconvenient of times and just sit and take from the time of Rasulullah. He wouldn't say anything. Such that a verse was revealed in the Quran where Allah told the companions, go easy with the Prophet. Give him some private time. They would come and sit 5-6 hours and just waste his time. He wouldn't say anything. This was Rasulullah. When you become humble, brothers and sisters, you are more loved in the community. And there's a hadith likewise from Rasulullah where he says, Inna ahabbakum ilayya. Do you know who is the one that the Prophet loves most? Wa aqrabakum minni yawm al-qiyamah majlisan. And the closest one to me on the day of judgment is ahsanukum khuluqan wa ashaddukum tawadu'an. Is the one who is most humble. Look in your community. Who are the most humble ones? Down to earth. They have humility. These are the closest Muslims. It's not the one that's necessarily praying the most in the masjid. It's the one that is the most humble with other individuals. This is the hadith of the Prophet. So Imam al-Sadiq says, number one, get rid of any arrogance that's inside your heart. If you feel like you're better than anyone else because of your lineage, because of your race, because of the country you come from, and in your conduct. Number two, the Imam said, وَتُطَيِّبْ كَلَامَكَ. He said, watch out for your mouth. Sweeten your words. When you speak to other individuals, make sure that your words are all nice and sweet. That is much easier than said than done. Our words, brothers and sisters, carry enormous weight. Sometimes one word that you say to someone, it's harsh. It may leave an indelible scar that will never leave from that person. I know some individuals, maybe 30 years ago, someone told them something, they scolded them. Until now, it's hurting their heart. Be careful. Our words, brothers and sisters, carry a lot of weight. There's a famous Arabic poem that says, جراحات اللسان لها جراحات السنان لها التئام ولا التئام لما جرحه اللسان. The poem says that if you're injured by a sword or by a spear, that injury will eventually what? Will eventually heal. But the injuries of the tongue, sometimes they never heal, brothers and sisters. Sometimes they completely ruin relationships. So be more aware and conscious of the words that you say. That's why we are told by the imams to think before you speak. Think 7 times, 10 times. Is this going to hurt that person's feeling? Have a pause button. Sometimes we blurt out anything that comes to our mind. No. Let there be a pause button before you say something to not hurt the feelings of other people. Put yourself in the shoes of that person. How would you tolerate it if that person told you this? So, our words carry enormous weight, negatively and positively. Sometimes just a nice word. You tell someone, you can make that person's day. You can make his week. You can make his month. I've read stories online of people who wanted to commit suicide, but someone, said salam to them. He said hi to them. As simple as that. And they what? And they decided not to commit suicide because that person showed that little love and care for them. Sometimes there are people in the community that are looking for even that smallest amount of love and care. Salamu alaykum, a tap on the back. So this is number 2. And finally, the Imam said, وَتَلْقَى أَخَاكَ بِبِشْرٍ حَسَنٍ. And number 3, always smile. This is something that you notice in the church. If you went to a church, everybody's smiling. The priest is smiling, the pastor is smiling, the reverend smiling, the janitor is smiling, the people, everybody's just happy there. And the masjid, everybody's like that. Not everybody. I can't generalize. Yes, sister. Alaykum as-salam. Exactly. You have to be proud about your identity. Don't try to hide your identity. Show who you really are. Show that you're proud about being named Muhammad or Ali or Hassan or Hussein and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, sometimes, I think it's probably better these people are called Mo because they're not acting like a Muhammad, they're acting like a Mo. So if you're acting like a Muhammad, like a Ali, yes, you're doing a service. But if your name is Muhammad and your actions are contrary to what the Prophet says, maybe it's better you keep the name Mo. I don't know. Anyway, so the third advice of Al-Imam al-Sadiq, and I'll end with this, is that always smile. There's a hadith from the Prophet. When Islam began, he spoke to his family members and he told them that, look, we're in a difficult situation. We have to attract other people to Islam. It's not going to be easy. He told them, Ya Bani Abdul Muttalib, oh, the children and grandchildren of Abdul Muttalib, which is his grandfather. Innakum lan tasa'u an-nasa bi amwalikum. You can't be loved through your money. Meaning, can you buy everyone through your money? No, because how much money do you have, right? You need hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, obviously, if you pass out money, imagine today I give everyone $1,000, I'll be the most popular Sayyid just in town and probably in the world. But how much money can I have? If I imagine I want to do it in all of Dearborn Heights. So the Prophet said this is the wrong strategy. If you want to be loved through money, you're going to fail because you're going to run out of money. The Prophet said, فَالْقَوْهُمْ بِطَلَاقَةِ الْوَجْهِ وَحُسْنِ الْبِشْرِ. There's an easier way. It's free. That you can win the hearts of people and be loved. How? Smile in the faces of everyone. Just keep a smile on your face all the time. I know some people in the community always smiling. Everybody loves them. So it's something simple, brothers and sisters. It's free. And it's also, I was reading, it's also good for you. It's also good for your health. I was reading that smiling can improve your mood, even if it's a fake smile. Even if it's a fake smile, psychologists say it could improve your mood. It reduces stress, it releases tension, and it's contagious. When you smile, see, everybody's smiling now. Everybody else smiles back. So make this a habit in your life, to always smile. This is something very easy we may overlook, but this does leave an impact on people around us. If we apply these three basic, brothers and sisters, but important principles from Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, I think we would be much closer to achieving our goal as Muslims in America. So, once again, finally, brothers and sisters, akhlaq is very important. The way we conduct ourselves, the way that other people see us behaving, this is very, very important, and it will have an everlasting impact. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq, the ability to be able to carry this responsibility, the responsibility of being followers of this great religion, followers of this great man, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us in this dunya his ziyarah, in the next life his shafa'ah. And let us please end by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha for all the believers that have passed away after a loud salawat for Muhammad.